My name is Ethan Cole, and the last thing I expected that day was for the woman I love to look me in the eye and say, I don't see a future with you. I still remember the exact way she said it. We were sitting across from each other in a small cafe not far from her office. She was sipping her usual oat milk latte, eyes flicking over her phone screen like I wasn't even there. Then she looked up, exhaled like she was preparing for war, and said it. Calm, flat, unshaken. I don't see a future with you. I didn't flinch. Not outwardly, I just blinked and tilted my head slightly like I hadn't heard her right. But inside, something cracked open. 3 years. 3 years of being her safe space, her sounding board, her backup plan. 3 years of skipped nights out so I could help her prep for job interviews, of covering her half of the rent when her startup failed, of listening to her cry at 2 a.m. when she didn't believe in herself, and believing enough for both of us. And now, with one sentence, I was apparently disposable. Okay, I said. Just that. Nothing more. She blinked, caught off guard that I didn't argue. Maybe she expected a fight, or a breakdown, or one of those desperate, pathetic lines like, we can work through this. But no, I just sat there, my heart folding in on itself like a dying star, and gave her silence. She glanced away, awkward, stirring her coffee. I mean, I've been thinking about it for a while. You're a good guy, but... Ah, there it was. The good guy speech. The verbal participation trophy. I just feel like we're moving at different speeds. I want more. More ambition. More... I don't know. Growth, I almost laughed. Because what she meant, what she didn't have the guts to say was, you're not enough. I see, I said. You're not mad? She asked, frowning. I shrugged. I didn't trust my voice anymore. It was taking everything in me not to break. Not to ask her why now, not to beg for an explanation that would make it hurt less. But there's a kind of silence that becomes armor. She stood up before I did, grabbed her coat. She didn't even finish her drink. I hope we can still be friends, she mumbled, almost as an afterthought. I gave a small, polite nod. Take care of yourself. And then she was gone. The bell over the cafe door jingled lightly. That was the last sound I heard before my chest caved in. I sat there for a long time after she left. I don't even know how long. Just staring at the space where she'd been. Everything felt numb. Not just the heartbreak. It was like her words had peeled back the layers of who I thought I was and found nothing. I wasn't angry at her. Not yet. That would come later. What I felt in that moment was shame. Shame that I hadn't seen it coming. Shame that I'd let myself be molded around her convenience. Shame that I believed love was sacrifice, even if it left me empty. But under all of that, quietly like a match being struck in a dark room, there was something else. Resolve. She had walked away because I wasn't enough. Fine. Let her go. Let her chase whatever shiny, ambitious fantasy she needed. Because if there was one thing I suddenly knew with absolute clarity, it was this. I was done building futures for people who never planned to include me in them. And maybe, just maybe, it was time I started building something of my own. The days after she left blurred together. I went to work, came home, microwaved leftovers I barely touched, then stared at the ceiling until morning. I wasn't just mourning her. I was mourning who I'd been with her. You don't realize how much of yourself you've handed over until you're standing alone in the wreckage, trying to remember what parts used to be yours. The apartment felt like a graveyard. Her coffee mug was still in the sink. A jacket of hers still hung on the back of the door. I should have thrown them out, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I started scrolling back through old messages. Notes she'd sent me after job interviews. Couldn't have done it without your pep talk. Photos from our weekend getaways. Birthday cards I'd saved like a fool. But then I found one message that slapped me hard across the face. It was a text she sent to her best friend, one she'd accidentally forwarded to me months ago. I had never opened it until now. Honestly, he's just comfortable, safe, like a backup plan if nothing else works out. I read it once, then again, then again. That was all I'd ever been to her, Plan B, her fallback guy. I stared at my reflection in the black TV screen. I looked like someone who had stopped trying. A man with a half-grown beard, slouched posture, wearing the same hoodie 3 days in a row. I hated what I saw, but not because of her, not anymore, because I realized I had let it happen. I had allowed myself to become someone so passive, so accommodating, that I forgot I had wants too. Where had my fire gone, my ambition? Once upon a time, I had dreams. I wanted to move up in my company, build my own business even. I used to read every morning, go for runs, take care of myself, but slowly I had shifted my entire axis to revolve around her. I gave up opportunities to support her career. I dropped hobbies she didn't care about. I silenced my instincts when she laughed at them, and now she was gone. I was a ghost in my own life. That night, I pulled out a yellow sticky note, wrote down one sentence in capital letters. No one is coming to save you. Then I added more. Get fit again. Apply for new roles. Wake up at 6 a.m., take courses, cut distractions, build your own life. I stuck it on the fridge right over her old calendar. The next morning, I deleted her number, blocked her on social media, took her jacket, the mug, everything she left behind, and threw it in a box. I didn't burn it. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just wanted it gone. I went for a run that morning for the first time in a year. I barely made it 5 blocks before my lungs burned, but it didn't matter. Because for the first time since she left, I wasn't chasing something that was already gone. I was chasing me. That night, I looked at my resume. It was outdated, boring, but it was a start. I opened YouTube, watched videos about personal growth, discipline, finance. I subscribed to channels that didn't just make me feel better, they made me want to be better. And every night before bed, I read just 5 pages of something that challenged me. No phone, no scrolling, just words and silence. No one knew, not yet. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't fixing myself to get her back. I was doing it because I never wanted to be that small again. The world had written me off. She had written me off. But I was about to rewrite everything. Change doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It starts quietly. An early alarm, a skipped soda, a single push-up when your arms feel like jelly. At first, my transformation didn't look like much. I was still tired, still raw. But now I was intentional. I woke up every day at 6 a.m. Not because it felt good. Most mornings it felt like dragging my body out of a swamp. But because I had decided pain was the new fuel. I joined a gym down the street. The guy at the counter barely glanced at me, just handed me a key tag. I started with machines I didn't know the names of, following YouTube tutorials. The first few days, my muscles screamed. But I kept going. I changed my diet too. Swapped energy drinks for black coffee, fast food for meal preps. It was boring, repetitive. But I told myself, discipline is louder than motivation. Work was another battlefield. I stopped coasting. I started showing up like the man I wanted to be. Prepared, sharp, willing to take on what others avoided. I volunteered for a project no one wanted. An overdue data migration nightmare. It was tedious, but I stayed late, found deficiencies, documented everything. By the time I presented my findings, even the regional manager took notice. "Nice work," he said. "Not many people would have tackled this head on." That compliment stayed with me. Outside of work, I began investing in myself, literally. I enrolled in an online leadership course, then another. I stayed in Friday nights learning how to manage teams, communicate with influence, navigate office politics. I updated my resume. It looks sharper now, more focused. I added a new headshot, rewrote my bio, and even built a LinkedIn presence. For the first time, recruiters started messaging me instead of the other way around. And with every small win, every pound lost, every new certification, every meeting where people finally listened, I began to feel something I hadn't in a long time. Pride. I wasn't just healing, I was evolving. There were lonely nights, sure. Sometimes I'd catch myself missing the idea of her. But I reminded myself, nostalgia is a liar. It only shows you the highlight reel, never the full picture. She had left me because she thought I was comfortable. Good. Let her keep thinking that. Let her believe she'd stepped over a man going nowhere because I wasn't going nowhere. I was going up. One day during a group lunch at work, I cracked a joke that had the entire table laughing. Even my supervisor smiled, genuinely. That's when I realized something else had changed. People were noticing me, listening when I spoke. Not because I was louder, but because I carried myself differently. I no longer needed to prove anything. I no longer waited for permission to be heard. I had spent years dimming my light so someone else could feel more comfortable. Now I wasn't apologizing for shining. At night, I'd look at the sticky note still on my fridge. It was now surrounded by others, smaller ones with goals checked off. Check finish. First course check. Lose 10 pounds. Check submit project proposal. Check speak up in meeting. This wasn't a glow up. It wasn't revenge. It was a resurrection. And I was just getting started. 6 months in, the mirror no longer felt like an enemy. I stood taller. My clothes fit better. My voice didn't shake when I spoke. I had clarity, not just about where I was going, but who I refused to ever be again. At work, I became the guy who got things done. Quietly, efficiently, no drama, no excuses. I stayed late, not because I had something to prove, but because I cared about doing it right. I started mentoring new hires, sharing little productivity hacks, coaching them through deadlines. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I knew how it felt to be ignored and underestimated. Then one day, my supervisor called me into a meeting. It was a Friday. I just wrapped up a major project 2 weeks ahead of schedule. My presentation had been tight, my numbers clean, my recommendations already gaining traction. But I didn't expect much. "Close the door," she said. My stomach twisted. She looked at me across the desk and said, "You've been consistent. Reliable and lately? Impressive." She slid an envelope across the table. "We're promoting you, effective next month." I opened the letter, new title, new salary, a figure I'd only dreamed about back when I was scraping by. I didn't cry, but something in me, something heavy and tired, let go. On the train ride home, I didn't scroll through my phone. I just stared out the window, watching the city pass, letting the wind settle in. Not because it validated me, but because I knew I'd earned it. Every early morning, every sore muscle, every lonely night spent learning while the world partied. I'd invested in me. And for once, the return was real. I celebrated quietly, treated myself to a good steak dinner at a place we used to walk past but never afford. I sat at the bar, ordered a glass of whiskey, and toasted not to the future, but to the version of me who refused to stay broken. A few weeks later, I ran into her. At a bar downtown, she didn't see me at first. I saw her across the room, laughing too loudly, sipping something overpriced in a group of women dressed for attention. Then her eyes met mine. She froze, took a half step forward. "You look different," she said. I nodded. "Yeah, feels different too." She tilted her head. "Where are you working now?" I told her. Her eyebrows lifted. "That's impressive." There it was. The first flicker of regret. I saw it in her smile, the way her tone shifted from casual to cautious. She asked what I'd been up to. I gave her the short version. Work's good, health's good, life's better than it's ever been. I didn't mention the six-figure promotion, didn't mention the courses, didn't mention how peaceful my nights were without her critiques echoing through my head. She laughed nervously. "I always knew you had potential." That's when I smiled. "No," I said, "you didn't. That's why you left." Her mouth opened, closed. I excused myself before she could respond. I didn't need her reaction. I didn't need anything from her anymore. Because the truth is, there's nothing more liberating than becoming the person you were always meant to be, after someone told you you'd never be enough. And this was just the beginning. If the first promotion felt like fresh air, the second was a storm I had to earn my way through. It started with chaos. One of the senior managers left abruptly, midway through a critical project that involved a multi-million-dollar client transition. Everyone panicked. Meetings were rescheduled, deadlines froze. The office buzzed with uncertainty, and managers scrambled to find someone, anyone, who could take control of the mess. I didn't volunteer, I simply showed up. Late nights, whiteboard after whiteboard, strategy sessions I initiated, not because it was expected, but because I knew no one else would step up with a clear head. At one point, I was managing 3 workflows, coordinating between departments that barely communicated and keeping track of client expectations that changed by the hour. I slept maybe 4 hours a night. My fridge held nothing but almond milk and reheated rice. But I kept going. The version of me from a year ago would have crumbled. But not this guy. This version of me had learned how to keep his emotions in check, how to delegate when needed, how to communicate with precision and confidence, and most importantly, how to lead. There was one moment, about 3 weeks into the chaos, when the division VP walked into the meeting room I had half commandeered. She stood at the back for a while, arms crossed, watching as I calmly directed a tense brainstorming session between 2 department heads known for butting heads. I didn't even notice her at first. I was too busy listening, solving, moving pieces. When the meeting ended, she pulled me aside. "You ever thought about moving up?" she asked. I blinked. "Up?" She smiled. "I mean, way up." 2 weeks later, after the dust had settled and the client had not only stayed but sent in glowing feedback, I was called into the VP's office. This time it wasn't just a pat on the back, it was a job offer. A role that was 2 levels above where I started. A team of my own, a seat at the strategic table. I sat across from her, stunned. "Are you sure?" I asked. She laughed. "You've been doing this job for a month already. I'm just making it official." The offer came with another salary bump. Benefits I didn't even know existed. My own office. A nameplate. I didn't call anyone to celebrate. I didn't post it on social media. I didn't text her, tempting as it was. I just walked out of that office into the cool spring air, stared up at the city skyline, and breathed. Really breathed. This wasn't about proving her wrong anymore. This was about proving myself right. There's something sacred about betting on yourself. When no one claps, when no one sees, when everyone's too busy doubting you or walking away from you. You become your own audience, your own motivation, your own future. At a leadership conference 2 weeks into my new role, I stood behind the podium in front of 200 professionals and gave a talk on resilience and adaptive leadership. Midway through, I paused. I thought about the cafe, her latte, that voice, that cold sentence. "I don't see a future with you." I smiled, quiet to myself, and looked out at the room, eyes watching, not just seeing me, but listening. And I knew in my bones she had been right. She didn't see a future with me, because it wasn't hers to see, it was mine to build. And I was building something she could never even imagine. It was a Thursday, just another long day at the office, reviewing a stack of applications for a new role on my team. A junior analyst position we'd opened after internal promotions shuffled the department. I was tired, a little irritable. I had already skimmed through 20-something resumes. Most were the usual bland summaries, overused buzzwords, uninspired cover letters that felt copied from a template. Then I saw it. Her name, right there, in clean, bold font. Emma Sullivan. I stared at it for a long time. My coffee went cold. The office buzz faded to nothing. It was like someone hit pause on the world. It had been well over a year since that cafe goodbye, since she'd looked me in the eyes and decided I wasn't someone she could build a future with. Now she was asking for a chance to be part of my future, on my team. I clicked the file open slowly, half expecting it to be someone else. But no, there was her picture on the second page. The same polished expression she always wore when she wanted something. The same smile I used to believe meant, "I love you," and now just looked like ambition dressed in charm. I skimmed the resume. It was average. She'd bounced around a few places, nothing remarkable, no major projects. Gaps explained away by personal development and career reevaluation. And then her cover letter. "I'm passionate about bringing clarity and strategic insight to dynamic teams. I believe in collaboration, resilience, and growth. And I'm eager to be part of a forward-thinking environment like yours." Like mine. I laughed. Not out of cruelty, but out of sheer disbelief. Was this irony? Fate? Karma? She didn't know, of course, not yet. The application system listed only the hiring manager's department, not my name. I called in my assistant. "Shortlist her," I said. She raised an eyebrow. You sure? I nodded. I want to meet her. The assistant smiled faintly but didn't ask questions. She knew me well enough by now to sense when something personal was folded beneath the professional. I spent that night thinking, should I even interview her? Was it fair? Was I being petty? I asked myself those questions more than once. But the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. This wasn't about revenge. I just wanted to see the look in her eyes when she realized. Not to hurt her, but to see if she'd grown. To see if she recognized the irony of walking back into the life she'd abandoned. Only now through my door. The day of the interview came. I sat in my office, flipping through her resume again. Calm, composed. Not a flicker of the man I used to be. And then, a knock. Your 215 is here, my assistant said. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I stood, smoothed my shirt, and said, send her in. When the door opened and she walked through it, time didn't stop. It slowed. She looked just like I remembered. Maybe a little more tired, more carefully dressed. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on me. I watched her face shift. Recognition, disbelief, confusion, all within a second. She began. Yes, I said, smiling politely. I'm the hiring manager. Silence. She sat down slowly. Her hands trembled slightly as she set her purse beside the chair. You've done well, she managed. I didn't reply. I opened her resume, business as usual. Let's begin. She wasn't the same woman who left me, and I wasn't the same man she walked away from. And now we were here, on opposite sides of the table. The power shift wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, weighty, final. She sat across from me, legs crossed, back a little too straight, eyes darting from my face to the resume in my hands. There was no confidence in her posture now, just tension masquerading as professionalism. She was trying to recover, to reframe the situation in her mind, probably wondering if she could spin this into something less humiliating. I didn't offer her an out. I asked the first question like I would for any other candidate. Walk me through your last role and what challenges you faced there. She blinked, clearly not expecting me to be so composed. Yes, of course, she stammered. I worked at Meridian Tech. We had a lot of restructuring issues, which made team coordination difficult. I focused mostly on process efficiency. I nodded, jotting down a note I didn't need. And how did you measure success in that role? Another hesitation. Her responses weren't bad, they were just shallow. Surface level. Like she hadn't expected to need depth, or worse, hadn't developed any. But I let her speak. I gave her space. And then I asked, tell me about a time you underestimated someone, and what you learned from it. Dead silence. Her breath caught, just for a second. I watched her try to mask it with a smile. She looked down, then back up. That's an interesting question. It's an important one, I said gently. I think, she began, pausing, we all underestimate people sometimes. And when we do, we often realize we missed out on seeing their full value. I nodded slowly. Did that ever happen to you personally? Her eyes flickered again. This time she didn't answer. Not directly. I've learned not to judge anyone's journey, she offered, voice softening. That was the closest she would come to admitting it. That she had looked at me once, really looked, and decided I wasn't worth keeping. That she had labeled me as safe, comfortable, not enough. And now here I was, interviewing her. I moved on. We went through the rest of the interview like it was any other. Skills, software knowledge, hypothetical scenarios. She answered them all politely, but her energy wasn't the same. The initial spark had dimmed. She knew. We both knew. As we neared the end, she asked, do you make the hiring decisions directly? I smiled. Yes, it's my team. She nodded, lips pressed tight. Well, thank you for considering me. I stood and extended my hand. Of course, I appreciate your time. When she took it, I felt the slightest tremor. Not fear, not guilt, just the weight of a moment, of recognition. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. You've changed, she said, half smiling. I've grown, I replied. There's a difference. She nodded once. Good for you. I waited until the door clicked shut behind her before sitting back down. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel smug. I felt settled. This wasn't revenge. This was resolution. Because in that room, for the first time, I had nothing left to prove. Not to her, not to myself. She came back into my life, not because I chased her, but because I had become someone people sought out. And her walking out again, this time through my door, wasn't a loss. It was a full circle ending, one that I wrote. I sat with her resume one last time. Not because I was unsure of the decision, but because I wanted to acknowledge what this moment meant. There was a time I would have hired her just to feel close to her again. A time I might have said yes out of some fragile longing, a twisted need to be validated. But those days were long gone. She wasn't the right fit, not for the role, and definitely not for the man I'd become. I drafted the rejection myself, not out of spite, but out of clarity. Thank you for your interest in the position. After careful consideration, we've decided to move forward with another candidate. Clean. Director. Respectful. I asked my assistant to send it off. No extra notes, no explanations. The next morning, she emailed me. 3 paragraphs long. It started with professionalism. Thank you for the opportunity. Shifted into personal reflection. I didn't expect to see you, and I owe you an apology for the way things ended. And ended with nostalgia. You were always better than I gave you credit for. I see that now. I read it once, then deleted it. Not because I was angry, but because I no longer needed her closure. That evening, I walked through the glass doors of our high-rise office building, took the elevator to the top floor, and stepped into the executive meeting I'd been invited to attend as a guest speaker. The room was filled with the kind of people who used to terrify me. Decisive, sharp, ambitious. But I no longer felt small in their presence. I shared my story, well, parts of it, the professional parts. How failure shaped leadership, how underestimation forged resilience. When I finished, a senior partner stood and said, "We need more people like you at the top." That night, I didn't go home right away. I walked until the city lights felt like stars I could touch. I ended up at the same cafe where she ended it with me. Same chairs, same hum of espresso machines, same quiet table by the window. But the man sitting there now was unrecognizable from the one she left behind. I didn't carry heartbreak anymore. I carried proof. Proof that being left wasn't the end, it was the push. She hadn't seen a future with me, and that's okay, because that future wasn't meant to be shared with someone who couldn't recognize it before it existed. I didn't just rebuild myself, I reclaimed myself. Every late night, every quiet meal alone, every run in the cold, every moment of doubt I fought through. It all led here, to peace, to purpose, to freedom. I paid the check, stood, and took one last look at the seat where I'd once been left behind. You don't see a future with me, she'd said. She was right, because she never would have imagined this one. And it was never hers to see, it was mine to build. And I had.